First off, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to spend with me and Ben and talk a little bit more about how you can improve your budgeting forecasting process, really get to a more agile planning process. That's what we're trying to give you today. Both me and Ben have been working in budgeting forecasting for a lot of time, and we both work for a company called I See It, who've been doing budgeting forecasting for 20 plus years with hundreds of projects behind them and experience. And that's the experience which we're bringing to this webinar. And today we're presenting really Workday Adaptive Planning, which itself has been in the marketplace for 15 plus years and has something like 6,000 plus customers on its platform. So we're trying to bring the experience of all that background there, all those different implementations, all those different customers to this presentation, just really distill down some key things around having a more agile planning process, because that's what we think is critical for companies in this sort of fast-paced world nowadays. So, I'll get on with that. Really what we got today is me just giving you that sort of background, distilling down those key points about agile planning. And then Ben is really the bulk of this presentation, showing you that in action in the actual tool, Workday Adaptive Planning itself. Feel free, you guys are already on the questions, which is great. Feel free to put the questions in. As you can see, me and Ben will see those. Ben, when he's doing the demo, won't so much. I'll interrupt him and prompt him. But if you've got any questions as we go along, feel free to ask them, and we'll try our best to cover them as best as we can. Right. So when we talk about agile planning, what are we talking about really? We're talking about the fact that business really is under a lot of pressure, always has been really. I don't think there's ever been a time when business hasn't had to react to changes in the marketplace. We do the best we can when we come up with our budgeting and forecasting numbers or budget numbers. In fact, you're about to hit a budget season very soon. September is the place when most companies put together their budgets. But really what people want to do is feed that in against the management reporting. So they're pulling in actuals against that, looking at that on a monthly, perhaps even a weekly or daily basis. We've got some customers that are looking at that. And from that information, compare the plan to the actuals and look at how you're doing, how's it going, what's performing well, what's performing not. Make better decisions and then act on those decisions, reallocate resources. Because really the budget or the forecast you've got is really the embodiment of your strategy. It's the financial embodiment of your strategy. It's saying where you're going to put the resources, how much you're going to spend on marketing, how many new people you're going to hire, whether you're going to open up a new factory or a new line of business, etc. So really what you're doing with the budgeting forecast is saying, look, this is how we're going to allocate our resources. Is it working for us? Is it not? Are we getting the results we want? Do we need to adjust? So the ability to go around these planning loops, having a agile planning process is critical for being able to adjust and change that business path, change that strategy. Having a business strategy which is locked in stone really doesn't help you get business agility. So that's what we're talking about really with budgeting forecasting, allowing you to put out a business strategy, engage different people in that business strategy, look at how it's performing, adjust to what's working, what's not working, and get a new business strategy out there. If you can do that quickly, do that with engaging people in a fast manner, then you've got business agility and the ability to adjust to shocks and changes to your market. And that's what we're looking to enable. But what we really see out there at the moment is really a real static process, a process which for most companies is embodied in spreadsheets and sending these around and lots of emails and different silos of data, and sales not really talking to marketing and not communicating with HR. Just even coming to agreement about how many people you have working for you is often tough for companies to get on top of, for the headcount plan and who we're hiring and which departments and which regions they should be in. So this can be complex for companies to do. It really leads to a static planning process. As I said, most companies are coming into their annual budgeting season in September. And typically for a company, it takes 3 to 4 months to go through a budgeting cycle. That's absolutely insane. Length of time to come up with numbers which we know are going to be sort of essentially wrong to a certain extent or out of date by 3 or 4 months by the time we get to New Year. Most companies with a quarterly reforecast, it takes them 20 to 25 days to go through a reforecasting process. It's too long. It's not agile enough. So what we're looking to enable with Workday Adaptive Planning, and what we see we enable with a lot of our customers, what we want is more active planning process, more agile planning process. And to do that, based on our experience with those hundreds of implementations, 6,000 plus customers, we've really boiled it down to these key points, which is, first off, it's got to be collaborative. It can't just be a finance-driven process. You've got to engage the right people around the organization. If you need a sales forecast, then you need to engage the salespeople. If you want to know what you're going to be doing around your people side of things, you need to be engaging HR. So you need to access and engage the different people in that process. But that means it's also got to be quite a comprehensive model, because the way HR look at the business, looking at people and skills and the right departments and stuff, is very different from sales, who look at it from customers and products they're selling as such. So you need an comprehensive model which really embraces the whole organization, models that. Now, if you have these two things, then you can do that in a more continuous method. So going around that loop, being able to do monthly reforecasts, or I like to not really run by the calendar. When something changes in the business, why can't somebody update me? Yeah. If the marketing campaign gets delayed by 2 weeks, why can't somebody in marketing go update the budgeting forecast or forecast plan and move that out and see how that communicates that around the rest of the business? So being collaborative, having a comprehensive model, and being more continuous is absolutely critical. Now, to enable this, what you need in a solution is something, first off, easy to use. You're going out to more people. You're engaging other people around the business in the plan. So it's got to be a simple process, something easy to get on board and use. For the comprehensive part, it's got to be powerful. We bump into lots of organizations using spreadsheets. They really hit the limit of those spreadsheets, handling the multi-dimensions, lots of cells of data, many formulas. Often these have to be loaded up into very special laptops or PCs to process them. They become real beasts of spreadsheets. So you need a tool which can handle that large volume of calculations and modeling around for you. And then when we come to continuous, we don't mean just continuous budgeting and forecasting loops. We mean continuous to update it. So as your plans and company changes, then you want to be able to iterate around different versions of the model, do what ifs, add in different scenarios, change how you're going to market or modeling different bits and pieces. You want to be able to do that quickly without the need to having to build up lots of programming skills or write code as such. You need a tool which is easy to use. Now, if you've got these three things, these collaborative, comprehensive, continuous process, which is delivered by an easy, powerful and fast tool, then you've got an agile planning process. And that's what we'll be showing you a little bit more today with Workday Adaptive Planning. And it's these things which will be showing you in just the next minute. I'll be passing over to Ben next. At heart, we've got Workday Adaptive Planning. It's got data integration in there, built in, so we can pull in data from multiple sources, pull it in from your finance system, which is the most common thing we integrate with, but it could also be your CRM or HR system. And we pull that into the modeling capability we have in there. So Ben will talk about all the different models where you can link through your P&L into your balance sheet and cash flow, do all that finance stuff, but more deeper models around your people side of things, or perhaps a supply chain model or other kinds of modeling you may want to do in the business. And from that, we can do all the forecasting and the budgeting forecasting, do all that reporting, actuals versus budget, board reporting, and drill down and look at all the data and share that around the business and really drive that budgeting and forecasting process for you. So that's a quick introduction to why agile budgeting and forecasting is critical. Ben's going to show you this really in a bit more action. Just to repeat, questions, Q&A, you guys know how to use it, but feel free to ask any more questions as we go along, and we'll get Ben covering that. So Ben, over to you.
Cool. Okay, so usual double check. Can you see?
I can see your screen. I'm just turning up my volume so I can hear you.
Okay.
I think it was my side, the volume issue. Yeah.
So As Rob says, I am going to give you guys a whistle-stop tour through Workday Adaptive Planning as a tool. So we'll have a quick look at some of the sort of the functions and the features, if you like, using a standard model as an example. So this is really just to give you an idea of the art of the possible. Now, there's a lot of stuff that Adaptive can do. This is just sort of one scenario that I'll take you through. So as we're going through this demo, if you just imagine how your data might look in this, what kind of models you might want to pull out here as well. If you've got any questions as we go through them, obviously, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A and we will do our best to answer them. But what you can see here is adaptive planning. So it's all cloud-based. So you can see this is open in my preferred browser on my machine. But, whatever you use, Safari, Firefox, Chrome, Edge, if you're crazy like that, your tablet, your mobile phone, your laptop, wherever you are, wherever you want to access your data in the cloud, you can do that as long as you can get online. So it's all through the browser, as you'd expect from these sorts of tools. What we've got here is a visualization, if you like. This is our dashboard sort of portal within adaptive planning. Now, there's 3 different key ways you can report data within adaptive planning. The dashboards are just one example, and we'll start with this because they look quite nice, and who doesn't love a dashboard, right? What this is doing is collating all of our forecasting data, our budget data, all of that plan data that we've loaded in here, as well as our actuals loaded in from our ERP system, and it's giving me them in this nice visual format. So you can see we're looking at the very top left here in our company summary. That's essentially what we call a perspective, and within that company summary perspective are a series of dashboards. So you can see here we're looking at the finance top line at the moment, and within this dashboard we've got a whole bunch of KPIs that we've picked out that we think are key for our analysis. So things like net product revenue at the top left here, that gives me the value in the current period, whether that's the current year, the current month, the current week, whatever it might be, as well as a variance to the prior period, and a nice micro chart here that I can use to get some more detail looking back historically or looking forward. I've got things like revenue quarter analysis here. We've got gross margin, COGS. We can see we've got some trend lines along with our columns as well. All the usual visualizations you know and love are in here. We've got a nice waterfall as well, so I can see that sort of transition on my numbers. And at the top right, my personal favorite, we've got a nice geo map that shows me income by location with a nice sort of heat map style layout. Again, anything you can imagine in terms of visualization is in here.
Yeah, me and Ben have a good argument about the best visualization. He's a crazy fool for thinking that that geo maps are the right way forward. As we all know, that waterfall charts are the best chart known to man. Yeah, and also very difficult, as we know, to build in spreadsheets, but simple to build in adaptive. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm a big fan of the geomap. It's a nice it's complementary to the rest of the dashboard. By itself, a geomap doesn't tell you a lot, but I think it just gives you a little je ne sais quoi, a little something extra on the edge. But waterfall charts are pretty cool, I suppose, as well. As Rob says, it's all very easy to set up, so it's all very much drag and drop. If I head up to the top right here, I can edit this dashboard. You can see on the left-hand side, I've got a series of different visualizations that I can pull out. So, everyone else's favorites, pies and donuts, who doesn't love those? But everything else you can imagine in terms of visualizations is in here, and it's very much drag and drop. Down here, you can see there's one that I've dropped in earlier. I'll show you how quick and easy it is to do that. I'll just get rid of this one I dropped in, and we'll go for a pie. Who doesn't love a pie? We'll drop the pie in here. And all I need to do once I've dragged that in is head up to my accounts at the top left. And this is just a list of all of the stuff that's in adaptive. So I could go to, let's say, one of my cube accounts, and we can go to something like product revenue, and we can get down to revenue here and say, let's just take our gross revenue and drop it in this pie. And obviously our pie is fleshed out here on the right-hand side. I can then go across to how I want to break this down. And I could say, actually, I want to break this pie down by one of my many dimensions. So I'll just quickly pop this in and say something like, I don't know, location, for example. And there you go. It's given me a really quick and easy, it's a very exciting pie, quite detailed for a pie, but you can see it's then given me all of my revenue broken down by various locations. And that's just it. I mean, that's not, the most useful in terms of analysis, but just to give you an idea, it's very quick and easy to drag and drop these things together. If you've used any of the BI or visualization tools in the past, this will be very familiar to you in how it functions. But that is sort of the whole ethos of adaptive planning in a way. It's very much click, not code. Sort of click and play, as opposed to, actually having to program this kind of stuff. You don't need to know Python or R or any kind of programming script to be able to build something like this in adaptive planning. It is all very drag and drop, click and play, as opposed to the usual programming backend. So from here, we can do all sorts of stuff. Obviously, we're looking at, if I look at the top here, you can see we're looking at our global entity. So if I give this a click, you can see this is what we call our level structure. So we're looking at Initech Global here, but then that breaks down to various subsidiary companies. And then within those subsidiaries, we break those down by regions. And then we break them down by within the regions themselves, we break them down by city. So here the UK breaks down by various cities within. This is bespoke to this particular model. You guys would have your own level structure. It could break down by cost center, by function, by brand, by division, by whatever it might be. But this is just an example of one that we've set up here. Now, if I pick out the UK, I can head back to this dashboard and you'll see that it'll automatically refresh to show me the data that's relevant to that selection. So now I'm just looking at UK's data. But you might also spot as well, the currency has also changed. So because we're looking at UK data, we want to see it in GBP. But I also have the option here at the top to change from GBP and view it in my reporting, my top level currency, which is in this case, US dollar. So I can check out on the fly my local data, but in my top level currency, which is quite neat. It supports all kinds of multi-currency. So if you guys are looking at multi-currency yourselves or you work in multiple currencies, it supports all kinds of exchange rates and currencies. If you want to report your data in Bitcoin, for example, something crazy like that, you could do that if you wanted to. I'm just going to jump back up to the top level here just to bring me back to my summary view. And there's a few things, quite a lot of stuff you can do in here. I could talk for hours about this, but I'll show you one key thing, which is just in here. If I want to analyze this data at a detailed level, I don't need to go to a separate dashboard to try and find that level of analysis. I can just go straight from my summary view. So looking at this revenue quarter analysis, I can see that my actual revenue for quarter 2 was about 7.9 million. Now, let's say you're sat in the boardroom and somebody asks you that question, where's that 7.9 million come from? If you've got a PowerPoint deck that you've spun up before the meeting, you might have to go away, book in another meeting, get a new view of that pack, and then come back and present it again. With adaptive planning, because we're in the cloud and the data is all on demand, I can just give it a click. And it'll ask me how I want to drill into that detail and see the underlying data within whatever view I've got. So here, I can jump into the data behind this chart. I can look at the models that build up that 7.9 million, right down to the sub-GL detailed view. I can break the quarters down by month, or I can break it down by any one of my business dimensions. So here we've got a whole list of dimensions that we've loaded this data in by, things like brand, product category, cost center, function, location, product, whatever it might be. Again, these would be bespoke to you guys. You might have a list of 2 or 3 dimensions, or you might have 50 dimensions that you're able to slice your own data by. But this is what we've got for this particular model. So let's say I pick out location. I can just give that a quick click and it will show me that revenue broken down. Here you go, by location. So I can see that 7.9 million comes from London primarily, but also Toronto, Japan, Berlin, and so on. Likewise, I can go even further. I can say, actually, what about London? Where does that data come from in there? I can give that a click and say, actually, show me that by product, for example. So what products are selling the most in London? And there we go. I can see all of my products broken down again in a nice bar. The idea is that that's not done on demand. That's not done pre-configured. That is done on demand. So I've not made any sort of setups in terms of the drill path. That just happens because it's there in the data. The details in the data and adaptive just allowing me to pick it apart as I like. Just to show you how that works, I can go back up to location here and I could say, actually, show me this by brand instead of product. And you can see it will break it down by brand instead. That's true not just of the dashboards, but any reports, anywhere this data comes out, I can do that on the fly. And I'll show you the other 2 examples of reporting as well. You can do this exact same thing. If I head back to the top here, there's one thing more I want to show you just while we're here, and that's this view at the very top right. So this little drop down here is our versions. So this is essentially a list of data sets that we have. We're looking at the working budget at the moment, and that means that anywhere we're looking in our model, whether it's the dashboards, the reports, any of our models, it's going to show me data that's related to the working budget. You can see here we've got all sorts of different plans, forecasts, and things like that. Down here we've got FX analysis as well. So perhaps we're quite sensitive to the US dollar or to inflation, for example, then we can set up a version to track that. And I'll show you how that works in a second as well. But just as an example here, I'm going to pull out this 3+9 forecast. And what you should see is that it will overlay a brand new set of data, but on the same set of dashboards. So there we go. It's now the exact same views, the same KPIs, the same dashes, all the same visuals. But this time I'm looking at it from a 3+9 perspective. So this is a brand new set of data overlaid over all of these. You can see here, for example, my ending cash balance has been highlighted in green for the first 3 months because those first 3 months are now actualized data from my ERP system. The rest is just planned data moving forward. The idea is that there's only one version of the dashboard, one version of the P&L, one version of the balance sheet, one version of all of my reports, but I can overlay infinite sets of data over those reports. So I don't have to pull apart, copy and paste Excel files I have to load in new data, make sure my cell references work, and then I've got a brand new report, a brand new dashboard, a brand new analysis. I can just go straight away with these version drop downs.
Yeah, no, thanks. And this is a really important bit which Ben's covering. We're just using the dashboarding capability to show off the dimensions of the model and the different elements of the model. And really the problem with spreadsheets, and most people are coming from spreadsheets, is because they're easy to use, fast to use, they're really good personal productivity tools, but everything gets wrapped up into one sheet, all the different dimensions of which you can only have two, and then you have to nest things, they only have rows and columns in spreadsheets. Everything gets wrapped up into it, the formula, the reporting, everything, the version of it, etc., all gets wrapped up into that one sheet. And that's what makes it really difficult to manipulate and use in a wider context as you start to blow it up into these more comprehensive models, which you want multiple people to use. And that's what Ben's showing off here, is that we've got all those different dimensions captured in the system, whether it be the version, whether it be time, whether it be the different dimensions he's drilling down by product, customer, company as such. It's all captured in here, and you can slice and dice it and move through it sensibly in this, which you just can't do in spreadsheets because you've just wrapped it all up into that cell reference and bits and pieces. And that's why spreadsheets become a bit like digital cement, because they're just very rigid, not very agile as such to manage. Anyway, sorry, Ben, just
digital cement. I like that. That's a tagline for the future. Yeah. So there's one more thing I'll show you in here, and that's just the CRM tab. Now I like to flash this up just to show you guys that you can also report alongside your financials and all of that sort of data. You can also report your operational data as well, or whatever else it might be. It could be sales data like this, for example. We've got CRM. So it brings things through like our pipeline analysis over here. We've got, things like deals won, weighted sales forecasting, our sales history, things like that. So we're bringing through non-finance data here, and then we're able to report it alongside our finance data. So a lot of our customers are now using this for whether it's HR reporting and dashboarding. It could be, marketing, could be operational, or it could be stuff like ESG, for example, which is happening a lot now. So you can load in all of your carbon tracking data and things like that. All of your carbon emissions and footprint data, and you can report on them alongside all of your financials. So you can get a really comprehensive reporting output, not just in dashboards, but obviously everywhere else we're going to be looking as well. I'm going to move on now to a few more exciting things. There's quite a few things to show you, and obviously I'm conscious of time. So I want to show you a quick peek under the hood. At the top left here, you can see we've got this little navigation menu. Now, this is quite handy because it's all in one place. Everything I could need in terms of navigation is in this left-hand bar. I am an admin, so I see everything in here. We've got things like the dashboards and the reports that we're looking at the moment, but we've also got things like our process tracker and workflow, which are some nice features that we might have a look at. And we've got things like integration, admin, everything's in here. But if I was an end user, I might just see the reports and dashboards, or maybe some of the models that are associated that I have access to. Everything else is curated by security. It's worth noting as well, before we leave this page, from a security perspective, I'm an admin, so I can see my entire company structure here. I can see all of these regions, and I have access to all of the data. My end users, or anyone I send a login out to for adaptive planning, will have this restricted based on what they have access to. So I can see everything here, but let's say you've got a UK manager and you just want them to see UK data, their login will determine what they can see. So they'll have the same access to the same dashboards, the same reports, the same models, but only the ones where UK data is able to show on it. And as far as they're concerned, no other data will exist, for any other company other than what they've been given access to, which is great because, again, you don't have multiple versions of the same dashboard for multiple different details and layers of user. You've just got one dashboard that everybody accesses, but they get a different view of the data depending on what they've been given, which is handy. Now, this Sheets tab at the top left here is the really interesting bit, because this is where Adaptive stores all of the data. So whether it's manually input by us, it's loaded in from a CSV file, or via integration from our source system, or wherever it might be coming from, or it's something that we've modeled out with formulas and things like that. It's really detailed modeling. Everything is listed in these sheets. You can see at the top here, we've got P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow, the standard. And then we build those three statements up using a series of detailed models below. You can see in this particular environment, we've got workforce planning, we've got volume planning for capacity, and we've got price lists, we've got product revenue. There's other stuff in here around expense planning. We've got travel, CapEx, we've got vendor contracts, we've got inventory planning for operational data, things like that. This is all bespoke to this model. You guys would have models that were built specific to you guys. So whatever you prioritize in terms of planning and forecasting and budget, we would build in here. But all of these sheets, you can see all the way down to the bottom, these all build up our P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow. So they calculate data at a very detailed level, and then they feed it all into our P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow for us. I'm going to show you a P&L just as we move forward, which is this one here. Now, this is a very familiar view. It's very spreadsheet-esque, so very easy to digest. You can see on the left-hand side, we've got our GL accounts running down the rows. So we've got things like revenue, COGS, some OPEX expenses down here as well. We've even picked out some metrics that we want to pull on the P&L as well. So we've got contribution margin as a value and a percentage, and the same for EBIT as well on the left-hand side. We can also report this data by month. So across the tops on the columns, we've got here our calendar runs January to December. For you guys, it might run March to April, for example, or whatever it might be. But it can flex. You can see from January 23 onwards, all of this data is in black font, which means that that's plan data moving forward. But everything before that, so December, November, and October 22 here is in green, which means that for this particular version of data, at the top right, we're looking at the working budget here. That is actualized data that's been loaded from our ERP system. So we can do all sorts of stuff with that. We can use that for prior year comparisons in our reports. We could say, show me my plan, my budget versus my actuals for the period. We can use that to build our forecast, for example. So we could say, take 12, 24, 36 periods of prior data that's been actualized and use that to build me a trend for my future forecasts. You can do all sorts with your actuals in here. I can jump again from the working budget and I can pull out something like the 3+9, like I did on the dashboards, just to show you how this works in sort of from a data perspective. You can see, there we go. It's now rolled our actuals forward all the way up to March 23. So that's now all actualized. And then my forecast in this particular version begins from April moving forwards. The idea being that you can have multiple forecasts. You could have a static budget, a static forecast, and then a rolling forecast that moves on month by month. And you can use those to compare and contrast and analyze whenever you like. There is no limit to the number of versions you can have in here. So we've got some customers that have got hundreds of versions of data, all of which they use for all sorts of different reporting purposes. I'm going to hop back to the working budget and show you a couple of things in here that are quite handy from a quality of life perspective in terms of managing and budget and things like that and adaptive. There's all sorts of stuff that's really useful. To show you how it works, we're going to hop up to the top here. So we're looking at the P&L for the entire group here, for our global group, which is all of our data. But I'm going to drill down and go to a really detailed view using this P&L. So I'm going to go down to company A into the UK, and I'm going to pick out London, for example. Now, this is just to show you that you can also see, again, same with the dashboards, a detailed view of this P&L. There's one P&L, one template. There's not multiple versions of a P&L knocking around. There's one version that we've got in here that has all of our data collated. You can see now that I've gone down to the detail level, I can start making changes to these cells as well. Whereas before, obviously, I'm at a summary level, so I can't make changes at the top. But in here, I can start typing in my new working budget figure for London. So maybe it's 5,000 for my airfare expense GL. Now, once I put that number in, I can right click on that and I can copy that forward, and I can have it copy all the way to the end of my plan for me, which is quite cool. It goes all the way out to 2026 or something like that, but could go out to 2080, 2090, however far you want to go. But I'm going to make a quick change to this just to give me a bit of, help my budgeting process along. So I'm going to copy this forward, but I'm going to copy this 5,000 forward to the end of the current year as opposed to all the way to the end of my plan. I'm also going to make a change to it as it goes. So I'm going to increase that number by a percentage. And let's say we increase this by 10%. So when I click OK here, I want to see that 5K then push all the way to the end of the year, but you can see it adds on that percentage each time, which is a handy little feature. If I don't know what my total budget or plan data is for the year, I could just put in something like, let's say 80K in the total year at the end here. And when I hit enter, Adaptive will ask me how I want to break that number back across the year. So is it proportional? Is it even? Does it use a 4-4-5 weighting? Or does it use one of the assumptions that we've set up for our own model? So you can see here, we've got business days in the month, revenue for the current year, expenses from the prior year. All of these will just be used as spreads, as weightings to help us spread that number back. If I take my prior year expenses as a guideline to sort of push this budget for this cost line, if I click OK here, you can see it then takes that 80K and then spreads it across the year using that as a weighting. So quite a nice way to sort of help us manage that process. Once I've hit save at the top left here, you can see the blue data will now turn black, which means it's committed. Anybody who's looking at a report, a dashboard, and Adaptive who hits refresh right now will see that change live wherever they are in the world, whatever report they're looking at, for as long as it includes data for London. Once I've done that, there's two other things I can show you in here, which are really cool. I can right click on this number here, one of the numbers I just changed, and I can go to Explore Cell at the bottom. Now, this will give me a really handy pop-up that will show me essentially the entire context of this number. So from an admin perspective, you've got great tools in here to help with oversight. This will show me the number in that particular cell. It will show me what models this number comes from. So I can see it's editable on the P&L, expense and trial balance. So if I need to know where this number is controlled or where the number can change from, that's where it is. And I can also see where it sits within my structure. So if this number was held against 50 different dimensions across a whole bunch of detail, I'd see all of this listed out here. So you can see a full context. But this top left here is the really interesting bit, which is our audit trail. If I give that a click, this will probably do what you can imagine it would do. From an audit trail perspective, it captures the time that any changes have been made, as well as who made those changes and what the value was before and what it is now. It tracks over thousands of changes, however long back in time you want it to. And you can also download full reports as well for an entire P&L, for an entire budget, plan, forecast, that will show you the full audit history of a particular account. So if any changes are made or any numbers don't look right, you can see where those numbers came from, and it really helps you just challenge them and make sure that you're on the right track. The one last thing I'll show you in here is this button at the top, which is the anomaly detection tool. Now, this is a really cool feature that uses sort of AI and machine learning to take 24 periods of actual data, whether it's days, weeks, months, whatever you've got, and it will roll that data forward into the future and create a distribution curve. And it will say, okay, this is what we're expecting over the past 24 periods. It will compare whatever my plan data is against that and highlight anything that doesn't fit the curve, doesn't fit the trend that we're looking at from the past 24 periods. So you can see here the numbers I changed at the top are highlighted, which means they don't necessarily fit. If I mouse over it in that little drop down, it's showing me that actually over the past 24 periods, I had a low of 568 and a high of 1,300. So my number here of 6,396 is a little bit over the top. And all that's doing is highlighting it to say, hey, this number could be slightly incorrect. It might be an anomaly. Why don't you check it out? It just saves me having to troll through 800, 1,000 plus GLs to find any outliers in a particular budget, which is essentially just a bit of a quality of life feature to help me, again, stay on top of my budget and just make life a little bit easier. Now, that functionality is available in the reports as well. It's available for any of our versions. So here we're looking at the working budget, but I could use this tool on any of our forecasts as well to keep our forecasts in check, or any of our plans or budgets or whatever it might be. So just a handy little feature there. I'm going to show you a couple of other things as well before the end. This is the P&L that we've just looked at. This is another way that you can kind of manage the budgeting and planning process. It's another dashboard that we've created, but this time we've used it as less as a presentational, but more of a functional view. So here you can see we've embedded a sheet within this dashboard to allow our end users to input data. But instead of inputting data directly into that working P&L, which is just a great place for us to look at the data collated before it hits the reports, instead, I want to give them a nice context-driven view just to help give them a bit of guidance when they're inputting their budget numbers. So you can see here, all we're doing is allowing our end users to input the number of units in terms of volume, month by month, as well as a discount percentage as well. Everything else in here, you can see has a little blue triangle against it, which means that is locked and it's being calculated by something else, whether it's a metric or something we've set up internally. But you can see things like cost price for materials, for labor, for overhead. That's all set centrally in a separate sheet and is essentially fed into here. So we control all of that. But you could allow your end users to tweak those numbers as well. But essentially, all of our revenue calculations, our discount calculations, gross and net, things like that are all calculated based on the numbers they submit. But what we've also done here is just dropped a few different visuals around the edge to give it some context. So instead of just putting in a number and saying that looks fine, send it off to whoever, as I change the numbers in here, I can see these visuals update in real time to really give me the context for what I'm doing. So here we've got the target revenue of 94% and the target expense for the year of 175%, which isn't ideal. But we can also see the revenue mix by product group down here, broken down in a nice pie. Again, who doesn't love a pie? As well as our net revenue plan versus a target trend line there as well. The idea is that as I change these numbers, I can see these change in real time. But what I'm going to show you now is kind of a what if scenario, right? This is something that you guys will have experienced on a day-to-day. Somebody asks a question in a meeting, what if we increase the number of units we're selling in a particular product, or maybe it's what if we sign a new deal, or we get a new supplier, or whatever it might be. Somebody asks the question, you add it to a list, and then it maybe takes you 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe longer to spin that up into a brand new analysis so you can actually see the impact of those numbers. I'm going to show you how you can do that in essentially in real time and adaptive planning using this view as our input. So what I'll do first, before I make changes to these numbers, is I'm going to create a brand new version to start playing around with. So if I hop over to this tab here, this is the modeling tab in the back end. This has all sorts of stuff in it around the levels, the dimensions, everything I can manage from an admin perspective is in here. But I'm going to click on this versions option at the top left. Now, this will give me the full list of versions that we saw before. There you go. You can see our working budgets in here. That's our default budget. To create a brand new plan, all I need to do is hit this button at the top to create a brand new plan version. And we'll call this Rob's plan. Rob's going to be our guinea pig on this one. And we can change all sorts of stuff around the plan itself. So things like who has access to the plan. It can be locked or hidden from users as well if it's a particularly sensitive set of data we want to work around with. We can change the date range for the plan, how far into the future it runs. There's all sorts of stuff we can control in here. But this bottom part is really interesting because it allows me to create this new plan as a copy of an existing plan. So here I can say take the working budget or any one of my other forecasts and budgets or whatever it might be. And I can then pick what I want to take from that. So by default, it wants to take everything, but I can say take the data, take any formulas, take whatever I want. I can configure it and have a brand new plan that's blank, or I can take it as a copy of the working budget. Now, if I hit save at the top here, this progress bar is essentially taking, it's the most exciting thing you've seen so far because it's taking all of the data from those dashboards, from the P&L, that entire list of sheets you saw earlier, all of those models, it's copying all the data from the working budget and pasting it into Rob's plan. Now, what that means is, and that's done that in a couple of seconds. I mean, you imagine how long that would take you normally to do that in Excel or whatever system you might be using. It is an absolute churn. But what that does mean is if I go back to this dashboard here, what I can now do is click on the drop down at the top right and change the version from the working budget to Rob's plan. Now, this is conversely the least exciting thing you've seen because it's now going to show me, there we go, that there's no change. It's the exact same data, which is fine because we wanted it to copy everything across. But what that does mean is I can now start making changes to the data and then start analyzing it again in real time. So I could say, actually, what if we jumped the number of units we're going to sell to something like 5,000? And then I want to copy that all the way to the end of my existing plan. Once I hit save here, you'll be able to see all the visuals around the edge of the screen are going to update in real time now that I've made that change. So our target revenue is going to go up. Our revenue mix by group has obviously jumped up massively there for that particular product, as well as our target, our plan versus our target is also going up by a crazy amount as well. What that means is I can then pull up something like a report that will show me a variance analysis. So on this tab here, we've got a list of, this is all of our web reports that we've got in the browser. So these are the ones that I've favorited from a list of all of our reports. You can see all of these HTML reports here are just ones that are in the browser, but I've also got some PDFs and some Excel and PowerPoint and Word files that I've also embedded in here as well. You can use adaptive planning for sort of general cloud-based storage for those sorts of reports as well that might otherwise be static. But I'm going to open up this what if financial statement and cash impact report here, which is one that I made earlier. And I just want to throw some new data in and get a brand new view using an existing template that I've got. So when this opens up, we can see, there we go. I've picked out a couple of accounts on the left-hand side. Again, it's all very drag and drop, just like the dashboard. I've dragged in some P&L accounts at the top. I've got some metrics like EBITDA and gross margin that I've dragged in. I've pulled in some balance sheet accounts as well. So I've got my list of summary asset and liability accounts there. And we've got some cash ratios towards the bottom again. All stuff that I've just dragged and dropped in very quickly. Now on the columns, I've got my prior actuals, and then I'm comparing two plan versions here. You can see we've got working budget versus working budget. And then adaptive will show me the variance on those two versions. Now, you can imagine what's going to happen next. On these drop downs at the top, I'm going to change the second version that I'm comparing on this report from the working budget to Rob's plan. When I hit run report here, you'll essentially see that entire journey laid out. You know, we've looked at a what if scenario. We've made some changes. We've quickly spun up a brand new version. I've rerun a report in whatever that was, maybe 2-3 minutes. And I can immediately see the impact of the change that I made. We made a very simple change, 5,000 units, but you guys could change inflation rates. It could be, you know, interest rates. It could be your supplier costs. It could be, you know, unit costs, whatever it might be. It could be your service rates or whatever. Whatever change you want to model out, you can model out 1,000 different changes and then see the impact using these reports in real time. Here I can see that is a fairly negative impact because maybe our costs don't line up, whatever it might be. But I can see the immediate impact of that change that we've just modeled out, again, in a couple of minutes, as opposed to days, if not weeks, to look through that kind of scenario. Now, there's all sorts of stuff I could show you here. I want to show you one last thing, which is the third way we can report. So we looked at the dashboards at the start and how we reported that data very visually. We looked at the reports in the browser here, where we've then reported that what if scenario analysis. But what I'm going to show you now is the third one, which is our Office add-in. So this is one we pulled up earlier. This is an add-in that comes with adaptive planning. Again, everything you've seen so far is included in the price of the package. There's no hidden extras, no extra cost. You know, you don't buy new features. It's all included in a single price. Even integrations, if you want to add new integrations into the future, new source systems, or you acquire a new system or whatever, you don't pay extra for that kind of stuff. This is the only thing you'd need to install with Adaptive. It is an add-in, so it lets you use Excel, PowerPoint, and Word with live data from Adaptive Planning, essentially. And 99% of our customers use this because it helps them take static Excel packs, static reporting packs, and essentially enhance them with live data. I'll show you how that works very quickly before we finish. But this is just an Excel pack we've pulled together. We're looking at sort of a formatted P&L view here. So we've got some revenue accounts down the left there, as well as some OpEx accounts. We're looking at 6 months of actuals. And then we're looking at the current period of working budget here. And then we've got some trend lines and some conditional formatting here from like the progress bars and things like that. If I click on the linked cells option at the top here, you can see it will highlight everything that's coming from Adaptive Planning. So everything in green is a label. So whether it's a company name, a time heading, things like that, all coming from Adaptive. And then everything in blue is the data itself that's coming from Adaptive. To show you how that works, if I select something like product revenue here, all I need to do in Adaptive is hit expand, and it will basically expand the data for me. It will give me a new view. It will give me a drill down on that data so I can see revenue A, B, and C. And you can see it's breaking that down for me using the same trend lines, the same conditional formatting, all that jazz. So I don't have to go away and pull up a brand new Excel pack, a new detailed view. I can slice and dice the data directly from Excel using the add-in. I'll collapse that down now. This is also a live report. So in terms of monthly reporting, for example, I can go up to the workbook properties at the top here, and you can see the report date in this particular pack is February 23. I can roll that forward to March 23 instead at the end of the month, and I can click OK. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit refresh here, but instead of just refreshing this page, I'm going to refresh all of my sheets. You can see at the bottom there, we've got a whole different set. We've got all sorts of tabs down there, things like, charts, P&Ls, balance sheet, cash flow, all of our models, all of those are linked to Adaptive Planning. I'm going to refresh all of those at once, having rolled the month forward. And you can see, there we go. It's pulled through my latest period of actuals for March, but also rolled the working budget forward for March as well. And then the trend lines and the variances have all updated in real time as well, because even though they're static Excel elements, they're linked to live data. So any charts I've got on here, for example, will pick up that live data as well in real time. Now, all I need to do is save this pack. So that's now committed to the pack. I can then go to, for example, PowerPoint. And you can see here, we've set up one that's got that same view embedded in it. And we've got some charts running around the sides here as well. All I need to do is just hit refresh in this PowerPoint pack. And you can see it will pull through the latest period of data from that table, but also update my charts in real time as well. It will even update things like the labels. So it now says March 23 instead of February 23, for example. The last step in this whole process, of course, is the Word pack as well. So here again, we've got a Word pack that we've just linked up. We don't have to make these from scratch. We can take your existing reporting packs and then link them up with the add-ins. I've embedded the same table in here as well. What that means is I can hit refresh, and then this will give me a nice update in terms of everything that's updated, because there could be thousands of things that you've updated in this pack that are linked to Adaptive. But you can see that here it's now pulled through March 2023 as well. The other thing about the Word add-in, which is really cool, is that it will also update the data with in line in the paragraphs as well. So you can see here things like the 1.35 million credit facility that we've got. That number will update as I hit refresh within the paragraph. You can see on the left-hand side, we've got this item here that says an increase. That's where we've got a little formula in Excel that says if the number's over a limit, then say it's an increase. If it's less than the limit, say it's a decrease. And then we've linked the text in line in the paragraph. And what that means is that you can update the data in Adaptive. You can then hit refresh in Excel, refresh in PowerPoint, refresh in Word. If you really want to, you can add some notation in here as well. But ultimately, you've hit refresh 3 times and your pack is ready to go. That entire end-to-end reporting process is now done in, whatever that was, maybe 5-6 minutes at most. And it's really helpful, especially if somebody comes in with a last minute change. You don't have to go through and recheck all the packs and run through that process. Late nights ordering a pizza, that kind of thing. You can just hit refresh 3 times and the whole pack's done for you in a pinch. That is everything I've got to show you in terms of functionality for now, unless there's any questions that you guys want to ask in terms of extra bits and pieces. But otherwise, I will pass back to Senor Douglas.
Thank you very much, Ben. Really good run through of Adaptive. Let me just share back my screen and just give us a little wrap up. Thank you everybody for coming through on time. There, we're just a little bit tight on time, just because let me just get this right screen going. Yes, right. Just because we really did a good demo there and went deep on that. If you've got any other questions, do ping them through. Happy to take any other questions we go here. Understand if you need to dash off to other meetings or to start your budget process or your forecasting process. As such. So what Ben covered there, these key points really, the fact that it was a collaborative, very comprehensive model, which we can go round in more continuous manner. You saw how easy it was to use for people, really simple for people to log in, put in numbers, a lot safer, a lot more secure, a lot more manageable than spreadsheets, but also powerful enough to do all that deep modeling we talked about, handle those different versions, do some comprehensive calculations in there. And because it's purpose built to do budgeting and forecasting, this is fast to put together. It is aimed to be owned by finance people, not specialist techie people. And what does that all mean? It means that you really, as a business, can really get some solid outcomes on this. We've got a lot of experience, as I said, hundreds of implementations ourselves, Workday Adaptive Planning, 6,000 plus customers over the last 15 plus years, and they've seen these sorts of results. Organizations spend 30 to 50% less time on the process. Cycle times typically up by 50% to go through that sort of planning process. Enabling you to spend a lot less time crunching numbers, stop being a spreadsheet jockey, and start being more strategic, look at risks and opportunities, do more of those versions Ben was doing and say, well, what if this happens? What if raw materials go up? What if this product launches a bit stronger? What if we hire 5 new people? What does that mean to the plan? What does that mean to our strategic plan? You can start being that more strategic business partner for your business, looking at risks and opportunities. And if you want to test that out to us, we do have this sort of little challenge. Come to us with your data, share your spreadsheets with us. We'll put that together into a demonstration for you, something a bit more customized for you rather than our generic demo, something so your business, your issues, and we can show you what that ROI, that business case would look like. So if you'd like to do that, just drop us an email. You can find me and Ben also on LinkedIn and reach out to us and just have that discussion with us. So with that, I'll just draw that to a close. I can't see any other questions coming in. So just once again, I'd like to say thank you very much for taking time out of your day and spending it with us. Hope you found that very useful. And we'll hopefully be speaking to you soon about your budgeting and forecasting. Enjoy the rest of today. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.